Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking 2 questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas and his Catholic faith. This is day 75. So let's get started. We're covering today questions 28 and 29 of the Prima Secundae, that is, of the effects of love and of hatred. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the one generously provided to me by Ave Maria Press, the 5-volume set translated by the Fathers of the English Dominican Province, which you can now get at a discounted price from Ave Maria Press's site by typing in the code SUMMA10. And so here we go. Article 1, whether union is an effect of love. Dionysius says that every love is a unitive love. As we mentioned in our previous episode, since we must first know a thing before we can love it, the apprehension of the perceived good denotes itself a kind of union with it, which is why Aquinas says, love itself is this union or bond. So just in knowing the slice of pizza on the table exists already unites it to my sensitive appetite, and this union affects love. From that point, from this kind of union, what Aquinas calls a union of affection, the passion of desire can follow, which draws me to another kind of union with the pizza, actually eating it, what Aquinas will call real union with the object of my love, which will then elicit joy. So love is both itself a kind of union with the lovable object, as well as the cause of my later actual union with that object by spurring on desire, and then hopefully later joy. And Aquinas' words, beginning with a quote from Augustine, Augustine says that love is a vital principle uniting, or seeking to unite two together. For in describing it as uniting, Augustine, refers to the union of affection, without which there is no love. And in saying that it seeks to unite, he refers to real union. Article 2, whether mutual indwelling is an effect of love. St. Thomas responds, every love makes the beloved to be in the lover and vice versa, because the appetite must follow apprehension. For me to love the slice of pizza on the table, as we have said, I must first know about it or sense it in some way, making it to be in me, in my senses, from which I can then desire it. So in this first way, love denotes indwelling, and that the loved object, the pizza, must be in me, in my sensual apprehension, before I can desire it. Additionally, yet still according to apprehension, there is a manner in which one could say also that I, the lover, am in the loved object. As St. Thomas teaches, the lover is said to be in the beloved, inasmuch as the lover is not satisfied with a superficial apprehension of the beloved, but strives to gain an intimate knowledge of everything pertaining to the beloved, so as to penetrate his or its very soul. Next, then, according to the appetitive powers, the loved object is in the lover by that complacency it elicits in the lover. Also, if this love is a love of friendship, there is a way in which my friend is in me insofar as I am currently willing some good to him, as well as if currently I take things that are happening to him to also be happening to me, since a friend is, as we described in the last episode, considered another self, an alter sui in the Latin. Lastly, and additionally, in regard to friendship, St. Thomas writes, mutual indwelling in the love of friendship can be understood in regard to reciprocal love, inasmuch as friends return love for love, and both desire and do good things for one another. In all of these ways, mutual indwelling can be said to be an effect of love. Article 3, whether ecstasy is an effect of love. First of all, what is ecstasy? Aquinas writes, to suffer ecstasy means to be placed outside oneself. And we can be said to be placed outside of ourselves both in regard to the apprehensive and appetitive faculties. When I think about God, or think about the pizza on the table, there is a way in which I am drawn out of myself into those objects outside of me, at least in thought. Moreover, as it pertains to the appetitive powers, my desire for the pizza does draw me out of myself towards it, towards the object of my love. And this would also be the case with love for a friend in wishing some good for him. And as an aside, in our understanding of friendship and the willing of goods for another, we should keep in mind, because it's easy to forget what we mentioned in the Prima Secundae about happiness, that truly everything we do for the sake of being happy, including what we do for our friends. Now, that doesn't make our goodwill towards our friends somehow mercenary, because it is within our pursuit of happiness. That simply follows from our nature. The will's object is good, and as an end, it's complete satisfaction, which is what happiness means. And because that is our end, all other things must find itself as a means to that end, including friendship. As St. Thomas puts it here, he who loves goes out from himself insofar as he wills the good of his friend and works for it, yet he does not will the good of his friend more than his own good. And for more on our final good, the ultimate end of our willing, which is happiness, I would see episode 62. Article 4, whether zeal is an effect of love. What is zeal? The definition given in the article is zeal, whatever way we take it, arises from the intensity of love. So the question is intensity of love, aka zeal, the effect of love? And it seems it would be better to say that zeal is primarily an effect of the particular good in question, that the greater this particular good is in one's eyes, the greater will their love be for it, and the more zeal they will have in procuring it either for themselves or for a friend. And we can see that with our Lord, where it is said, zeal for his house will consume me. Christ's intense love in his human nature for the glory and honor of his divine nature will be the passion behind his act of driving out the money changers from the temple. It will be evidenced in his voluntary crucifixion for the salvation of mankind. In summary, we can, as Aquinas does, define zeal as always denoting an intense love within the lover for the object of his or her love. Article 5, whether love is a passion that wounds the lover. If we take a wound to be a kind of corruption or illness of the lover, we must say that love in itself does not wound the lover, because love is, on the other hand, a kind of adaptation, that's Aquinas' word here, within the lover to the object of his love. As we've said previously, it is an affective union of the thing loved within the lover. However, love does cause a handful of other effects, as St. Thomas mentions here. The first is a kind of melting, he says, and this is simply an expression to denote the entrance into the heart of the beloved object in intention in the lover, opening the possibility for subsequent actual union with that object. Another term mentioned here is fervor, which denotes the ensuing desire which follows upon the love of an object. Then lastly are the terms enjoyment or languor. Enjoyment ensues when actually united to the object of our love, and languor is the pain or desire of absence of the lovable object. St. Thomas then lastly reminds us that since the passions are bound up with the body, and thereby come with bodily effects, in this way they can be said to wound us if the emotion's effect on the body is detrimental in some way to the function or use of our body. Article 6, whether love is the cause of all that the lover does. Dionysius says that all things, whatever they do for the love of good. And Aquinas responds in this article with one of the shortest responses we probably have ever encountered thus far in the Summa. He writes, every agent acts for an end, or some goal, as was already stated. Now the end is the good desired and loved by each one. Wherefore it is evident that every agent, whatever it be, does every action from love of some kind. And with that, we move on to question 29 on hatred. Article 1, whether evil is the cause and object of hatred. The major takeaway from this article is that there is manifestly subjectivity in our passions, that although evil in things is something very objective, like blindness in sight or vice in the soul, when it comes to our passions, things are taken to be good or evil, not so much as they are in themselves, but how we perceive them to be. If we consider a thing to be good for us, to be in harmony with us or benefit us, to have some kind of positive relation to us in our eyes, like the adulteress might see adultery as enjoyable or good in some other aspect and therefore love and enjoy it, yet that does not make adultery good or good to do. It is actually not good ever. In the same way, And as another example, when I knock someone's door to proclaim Christ Jesus and his mystical body, the Catholic Church, many times I am clearly hated. Yet that doesn't mean that I am evil, God willing, but it does mean that I am being perceived as an obstacle or hindrance or threat to those who are apprehending me. Therefore, just as love is a kind of complacency in the apprehended perceived good, its opposite is hatred, a kind of dissonance perceived in some object, to use St. Thomas's words here, as something opposed to us and therefore perceived as an evil. So in response to this article, we can reply in the affirmative: evil is the cause, an object of hatred. Article 2, whether love is a cause of hatred. It is, and in the manner alluded to in the previous article, if love is based on the perceived good, therefore whatever is opposed to the attainment of that good or opposed to someone we will it for, either ourselves or a friend, then it will be considered an evil and therefore an object of hatred. And a word from St. Thomas: love consists in a certain agreement of the lover with the object loved, while hatred consists in a certain disagreement or dissonance. Consequently, love must needs precede hatred, and nothing is hated save through being contrary to a suitable thing which is loved, and hence it is that every hatred is caused by love. Article 3, whether hatred is stronger than love. The key to this article is the following from Aquinas: a thing is moved to the end more strongly than to the means. And everything is ordered to some good as its end. As we've mentioned already, every agent acts for an end, and that end must necessarily be good, whether true or just apparent, or there would be no reason for pursuing it or acting towards it as an end. Thus, hatred can never be directed towards the end, because the end as such must be a perceived good. That's why it's an end. Therefore, hatred can only come in the means, in the removal of some means opposed to our intended end. And since the means can never be greater than the end in our eyes, then hatred can never be greater or stronger than love. Nevertheless, hatred can sometimes seem stronger than love, and this for two reasons. First, because hatred can be more keenly felt than love, and this because hatred is based on a kind of dissonance towards those things opposed or contrary to us. As an analogy, think about the difference of the feeling of physical pain versus the physical tranquility of health. The former is just more noticeable. Secondly, hatred can seem to be greater than love when a greater hatred is compared to a lesser love, such as the hatred for one's enemy versus the love of some song or some item on the menu. Yet if we compare the hatred of one's enemy to our love for the good of happiness, we will quickly see that the latter is much stronger, strong enough to motivate all of our actions, of which the former is definitely not able to do. Article 4, whether a man can hate himself. Only in the sense that he can take something to be good for him which is not actually good for him. For we must and can only will goods, like we can only see color. Look around the room and see if you can see anything not colored, and you cannot. In the same way, we cannot will anything unless somehow in some respect we take it to be good for us. The object of the faculty of sight is color, and the object of the faculty we call the will is the good. Even in the case of suicide, as St. Thomas says, no man wills and works evil to himself except he apprehend it under the aspect of good. For even they who kill themselves apprehend death itself as a good, considered as putting an end to some unhappiness or pain. So even the man who takes his own life does so for his own good, although it is obviously a distorted apparent good and not truly good for him to do. So in response to our article, based on the nature of the will, man cannot hate himself, in the sense that he must always will goods, and as a means to his ultimate good, which is happiness. Yet in another way, a man can hate himself by willing goods which are only apparent and not truly good for him. Article 5, whether a man can hate the truth. St. Augustine famously wrote in his Confessions, "They hate the truth, for the sake of that thing which they love instead of the truth. They love truth when she shines on them and hate her when she rebukes them, which is what Aquinas will explain in this article, that we cannot hate truth in general because it is a transcendental, in reality the same as goodness, as being, and only different in our consideration of them according to reason. And since no one can hate the good in general, they also cannot hate the truth about things in general, but one can hate a particular truth insofar as it is perceived repugnant or at variance with one's desires, which we have many examples of from Scripture, including that of King Herod, who married his brother's wife, which is unlawful, which then caused him to hate John the Baptist for bringing attention to it, and he presumably hated the truth itself, that adultery is evil. St. Thomas will say on this point, nothing hinders some particular being or some particular truth being an object of hatred, insofar as it is considered as hurtful and repugnant. Then Aquinas gives a couple examples of how a truth can be considered repugnant to us. First, if we simply wish some truth to not be true, likely as Herod did towards the truth that adultery is wrong. Second, if one wishes he did not know some particular truth, like one may hate knowing the 10 Commandments if his desires are set against them. Thirdly, one may hate a truth for it being known by others, like the person who hates the truth about one of his sins being discovered by others. In all of these ways, and surely others as well, man can be said to hate the truth. Article 6 in our last article, whether anything can be an object of universal hatred. Can anything be hateful to all, universally hated? And in the sense of the actual act of hatred as considered as a sensitive passion, since the passions follow upon sensual apprehension, which is always of some particular thing, we cannot be said to actually hate every particular instance of something at the same time. Our passions are always directed to the particular, not the abstract and universal. But we can be said to always hate certain kinds of things when we do encounter them, like the sheep can be said to hate the wolf or have a repugnance to it whenever it happens to apprehend it. In the same way, Aristotle says the thief and the backbiter are hated by everyone. These are examples of objects universally hateful or repugnant to all. No one likes being spoken of poorly behind their back, and no one likes being stolen from. And that's pretty clear. So according to hatred considered as a passion, some objects can be hateful to all. And that is all for questions 28 and 29 of the Prima Secundae, that is, of the effects of love and of hatred. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.